I believe you have two willing parties, and usually that's good news, but two willing parties that want to make a deal. And we'll journey together, and we'll go over, and we'll see if it can be done. And it's possible it might not be able to be done. On the other hand, it's possible it will, and we're going to save thousands and thousands of lives a week.
The Ukrainian president, joined by European and NATO leaders, has met with President Trump for a high-stakes meeting at the White House aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. It's hoped that this would be achieved through trilateral talks between Presidents Trump, Zelenskyy and Putin at a later date, and many issues were under discussion.
We have to stop the killing, we have to stop the destruction of Ukraine's infrastructure.
Security guarantees, how to be sure that it won't happen again.
Thousands of Ukrainian children that have been abducted, and as a mother and grandmother, every single child has to go back to its family.
On the eve of the meeting in DC, and more death and destruction in Kharkiv. You may remember the last time that Messrs. Trump and Zelenskyy met at the White House, it was a disaster.
You're gambling with World War III.
And while on the surface things appeared more cordial on this occasion, Mr. Trump's tone since the Alaska summit 3 days ago, August 15th, must have been less than reassuring for the Ukrainian president.
What would your advice, based on today, when you talk to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, what's your advice to...
Make a deal.
Make the deal.
Got to make a deal, yeah. Look, Russia's a very big power, and they're not. They're great soldiers, and they have great, but, you know, they also had the best equipment. You know, they had our equipment.
En route to the Alaska summit, Mr. Trump was adamant that the way forward was a ceasefire.
I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today.
A suggestion that Mr. Putin rejected.
There's no deal until there's a deal.
Today at the White House, and Mr. Trump said he doesn't think a ceasefire is needed, and explained why Russia probably wouldn't have gone for it.
You know, I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other. You have a ceasefire, and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that.
The problem is that this issue could become a sticking point, with some European leaders today already suggesting that a ceasefire is key to talks going forward.
I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia.
In order to organize such a trilateral meeting, your idea to ask for a truce or a ceasefire, at least to stop the killings, as we discussed, is a necessity. And we all support this idea.
European leaders have told the press that in his conversations with them, Mr. Trump has said that Mr. Putin demanded he get all of Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast region. But that's tantamount to Ukraine giving up its main line of defense in the east.
Russia is still unsuccessful in Donetsk region. Putin has been unable to take it for 12 years. And the constitution of Ukraine makes it impossible to give up territory or trade land.
According to reports, Mr. Putin promised that in return for Donetsk, he'll stop his assault and won't invade other countries.
You can't have a peace deal between two warring factions unless both sides agree to give up something and both sides agree that the other side gets something.
But over the years, Mr. Putin has broken promise after promise to Ukraine and the West. This includes the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, promising to defend Ukraine against outside attack, as well as multiple Minsk agreements. And that was one of the points that Mr. Zelenskyy tried to get across in his first meeting at the White House, that negotiating with Mr. Putin has repeatedly failed over the years.
I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yeah.
Mr. Putin wants Donetsk because that way he would gain at the negotiating table what he's been unable to conquer on the battlefield. And it would also make it easier to take more territory when he or his successor think the time is right to strike again. Interestingly, it was one of the least known leaders sitting at the table, the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, who best described what's at stake.
We might come from a small country, but we have a long border with Russia, over 800 miles. And we, of course, have our own historical experience with Russia from World War II, the Winter War and the War of Continuation. And if I look at the silver lining of where we stand right now, we found a solution in 1944, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find a solution in 2025 to end Russia's war of aggression and find and get a lasting and just peace.